Welcome back, everybody. Most of us experience a little bit of stress or anxiety before a test, and in fact, experts say a little nervousness can actually help sharpen our minds. But if the stress is excessive, it'll interfere with performance. With SAT and ACT testing dates in May and June, we thought it was a great time to get some expert tips on reducing test-taking stress for students and parents. Greg Smith from Northwest Educational Services is here with more. Thank goodness you're here. Thank you. The books give me flashbacks just looking at them. That's a lot to prepare for. So let's talk about just the level of stress in general, why tests bring that out in us.
Well, the primary reason is usually, for most people, it's a lack of preparation. Typically, the more we prepare for something, the better we're going to feel about our ability to perform.
The calmer we are.
Yep.
You divided your tips into separate ones for students and parents. I guess that's kind of obvious, but there's some parts of it that aren't so obvious for parents. Explain why you made the two columns.
Well, I kind of broke it up into three basic categories, but the idea is there's a parallel for the student and for the parent in each of those three categories.
But they're separate. Okay,
Yep.
So your tips for early stress management, get familiar with the test, and you have an idea for students and parents. Let's talk about for students.
Yeah, for the student, the primary piece is, as intimidating as those look, it's actually important to get those books. With respect to the parents, it's, make that investment. Go ahead and purchase those. And the primary piece is practice exams are important. The more you take them, the more familiar you become with the exam, and therefore the more relaxed you will be on the actual test day. You may not like it along the way, but it will begin to help you to reduce that stress.
You'll be glad you have done it when it's over. How closely should you, when you're taking those practice tests, try to simulate the experience of the classroom in terms of a proctor and timing and all of that?
Sure. So there's two basic modes that we talk about in our office about practice. One is the idea of regular drilling. It's important to just constantly remind yourself it is timed. When I first tell a student you should do a 5-minute drill regularly so that you understand the basic timing of the exam, they often get a little anxious about it. And I said, let's talk about that in a couple of weeks. And what they begin to realize is that stress begins to get lower and lower because it's a mind-body connection. They literally get used to that planning. And then there's an old joke about those kids that are really pursuing super high scores. When they interview all these kids that do well and they say, how do you do that? And they say, well, we eat tests. And the joke there is taking practice exams really helps, getting that big timing piece down.
So just do it, start early and do it.
But the parent side of that would be, but you don't have to push that. You want to provide the opportunity for that practice, but not necessarily be the parent that's asking, have you practiced today? Have you practiced today?
Yeah, which may only add to the stress.
Right.
But you do want them to practice. How do you encourage? What's encouraging behavior?
For a parent, it would be what I refer to as kind of that field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. Make the environment. Create a quiet opportunity. Create regular opportunities. For the student, we talk about the idea of 5 first. And the idea there is that if the most typical thing in a student response, they look at this and they think about their day, and this represents a lot of fear. It represents something that's way out into the future. And it's a set of things they're going to be considering that are about decisions they're going to make way years into the future. So when they think about the homework that's due tomorrow, they're of course always going to prioritize schoolwork first. It's understandable, it's natural. But we talk about 5 first, and the idea is start there before homework. Make it the first thing you do.
5 minutes of it?
Yep,
and
do a 5-minute drill, and then
Okay.
the brain's going to make a better decision about whether it's got time to do a little bit more. But nobody at the end of a long study session doing their hard schoolwork, at the end of the day is going to go, oh, I want to go do that.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. Okay, tip number 2, rethink the way you see practice, and that's for, let's talk about students first.
Yeah, so the primary piece about practice there, as alluded to with the 5-minute drill, is to think of it as habitual, to think of it as a small, regular pattern. We brush our teeth every day, we prepare meals every day, we sleep every day. Those are regular pieces. We want to turn practice into that same thing so that it brings that stress level down.
And you have, for parents, same thing. Don't hover, provide a good environment, don't stress them out even more.
Remind yourself that it's their experience, not yours, and it turns out that if an adult tells a teenager over and over again, you should practice, The teenager's job at this point is to learn how to say no in a lot of different ways. They're defining independence, so it's a little counterproductive. It doesn't do what we think it does as adults when we're doing constant reminders.
Right. And it's hard not to turn your worry into their stress, but you have to stop.
Yep.
And tip number 3, this is interesting. Stop competing. Students worry about comparisons with their friends and peers, and parents worry and also use the pronoun we as though they have taken the test also.
Right.
So tell me about this.
Sure. So in the office or over the phone when I'm talking to parents, it's amazing the number of times you'll hear that pronoun we getting used. And it's really important to recognize that whenever we're doing that, we're actually adding stress to the student's life, but we're also missing an opportunity, which is to recognize it's the child's experience. It's their opportunity, and so we really want to avoid that use of the we pronoun. It's not something that it actually makes it worse.
It's such a good point because it is also a time when parents are having that struggle of how much do I step forward, how much do I step back. You know it's really important, you're not sure your kid knows it's really important,
Right.
but that's a good reminder for us creating and keeping those boundaries in a healthy way. So stress management during a test, what do you suggest?
And this could be on any type of exam, but I've had the opportunity to proctor large SAT exams, and there's a phenomenon of what I refer to as kind of the pretzel, where students over time, as they're taking the exam, their body literally begins to shut down, and then a little bit like a whale coming to the surface, there might be a kind of breath like this. And so one of the things that you can do is when you feel that moment, you need to recognize you've been in that stressful moment for at least 5 minutes, because the brain-body connection, that's the way it handles stress. It's got a very slow recognition time. So put down the writing utensil, hands on knees, get that back
Square
begin to
up.
arch. You might even close the eyes, get a breath in and out, and just that, it does a reset. And you might do
And
that
then go
3-4
on.
times during the exam as needed, based on whatever you're feeling.
And this would be useful for the MCAT, the LSAT, whatever you're taking.
Exactly,
Whatever
exactly.
test you're taking.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. You have a very calming presence. No need to stress. We've included all of Greg's tips for both students and parents on our website. Keep those number 2 pencils sharp, and we'll be right back.